Halu b'sil tzlei shama, halu b'sil tzlei ruach, kollel neshama, hallelujah, hallelujah. And we gave tzedakah earlier, and now we are going to continue with the Gemara where we are up to.
Okay, I got on.
You got on, okay, Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
Marks on the screen are on too. Those green marks.
You have to take that off. All right, done. Okay, we are holding here in the Gemara Daf Chaf Amud Beis 20b, discussing mitzvos that can take place only during the daytime. In short, everything in the Beis Hamikdash can only take place during the day, aside from one thing, which is the burning of the leftover limbs, Ivarim, on the Mizbeach. Everything else in the Beis Hamikdash took place during the day. And we're bringing throughout the Gemara different sources for every single individual Karban, type of Mitzvah, giving a soita to drink, how all of these things must be done during the day. So we spoke previously about what's called smicha. Smicha is when you lean on the karban in order to do vidoy, to admit and can confess to Hashem. Tenufa. Tenufa means waving. There's certain karbanos that one must pick it up and wave it in front of Hashem. At the karban, and sometimes together with the kohen. Now the tenufa, the waving of the karban, has to be done right before the karban is brought. So therefore, we know that it has to be done by day. Now, for example, a karban of a soita, the meat has, some parts of the animal have to be waved. However, the karban omer, which we have brought, the karban omer, the barley harvest, that has to be waved also in front of Hashem. So when it's brought into the Beis Hamikdash, here you see how they're processing it, they're sifting it, and now they're bringing it up to the Beis Hamikdash, the karban omer. When they wave it, it has to be done during the day, as it says in Parshas Emor. The Torah says, on the day that the karban omer, the omer offering, is waved in front of Hashem, then you can already start to eat new grain that was grown that year. So from there we see that it has to be done specifically during the day. Hagasha is when one brings, where's a picture? One is bringing close to the Beis Hamikdash some of the karbanos. So when one brings it to the Mizbeach, brings it to the altar, it has to be done during the day as well. The iskash l'tenufa. Because in Parshas Nosoi, the word tenufa, waving, is right next to Hagasha, bringing a karban mincha, a meal, a flour offering to the Mizbeach. As it says. This is a woman, a saita, who has been accused of being unfaithful to her husband. She has to bring a certain karban, sacrifice in the Beis Hamikdash, and drink waters which had Hashem's name erased in the water. And she says, the woman, the priest, the kohen, shall take the flour offering from the woman's hand and shall wave it in front of Hashem, and bring the flour offering to the Mizbeach. So bringing to the Mizbeach is a special avodah, a service in the Beis Hamikdash, and it's something which a kohen has to do. This entire verse, it all has the same parameters, just as a kohen, the priest, is the one who waves the korban mincha, who waves the flower offering, and that has to be done during the day, as we said before. Waving of a korban mincha has to be done during the day. So the next part, the hikriv, bringing it close to the mizbeach, must also be done during the day. The Hanif v'hikriv. So it says that the kohen shall wave and offer and bring in front of Hashem and sacrifice the korban, the offering, and the flower korban, the korban mincha. And just like the waving has to be done during the day, so all parts of the service of the Beis HaMikdash, including bringing the korban mincha to the mizbeach, has to be done during the day from sunrise to sunset.
Hello, I made it through.
Dovi, I don't believe it. You actually made it. Thank you for making it.
Yeah, exactly. I had to find the Zoom link because I haven't used Zoom for you in ages.
You zoomed onto the Zoom. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Now, Dovi, remember what Malika is? Size for a modern name, Malika. Malika is when somebody has a kohen has a long thumbnail.
Yeah.
And they have to shecht certain karbanis, the animal birds that are brought in the Beis HaMikdash, with their fingernail from the back of the neck. And that has to be done only during the day. The kmitza is, as we brought over here, the 3 fingerfuls of flour called the kmitza, the koimetz. So a bit of flour which is burned on the mizbeach from any flour offering. Lihaktara. Haktara is burning parts of the korban on the mizbeach. Hazaya. Hazaya is again sprinkling the blood of the korban on the mizbeach. I have a picture of it over here somewhere. That's one of these pictures is Hazaya. So sprinkling the blood of korbanos on the mizbeach. Let's go into here. All of these things must be done during the day. And let me get that ready. Okay. Anyway, so but how they so the mizbeach. I'll just do. We'll have to get to the mizbeach. About that. Here's how here's Kohanim bringing korbanos, sacrifices onto the mizbech, onto the altar, like we learned has to be done during the day. And here's a mizbech. We'll see some of the avodah. So we're talking about shchita is slaughtering the animal, has to be done during the day, and all the different types of korbanos have to be all done during the day. Here is bringing wood, here is bringing parts of the animal, here is pouring some of the different types of blood, all on the mizbeach, has to be done all during the day. Here he's pouring some all the extras of the blood into the holes on the side of the mizbeach. All these things have to be done during the day. Here it is. So here the Kohen is some types of karbonas had to be with a finger rubbed or pour on mizbeach. Some had to be poured. Some had to be flicked, sprinkled. All of these things are called hazaya, sprinkling of the blood, and all of these took place all during the day. How do we know all of these things have to be done during the daytime? We're going to have one long source. It says, "B'yoyim savoisai es b'nei Yisrael." It says, this is the law which Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu on the day which Hashem commanded the Jewish people. End of Parshas Tzav. Goes through all the different karbanos, all the different types of sacrifices, and then he says, this is the Torah, the law of the oila, the burnt offering, the flour offering, the chatas ha'asham, all the different offerings. B'yom tzavlosi, the day that Hashem commanded Jewish people to bring the karban. L'hakev es karbaneim, to offer their sacrifice. So on the day that Hashem commanded the Jewish nation to offer their sacrifice can be read as well that Hashem commanded all the Jewish nation to offer their karbanos or sacrifices during the day. This only teaches us about the halachas of bringing karbanos. Shechita, the shechting, the slaughtering, we cannot learn from here because even someone who is not a Kohen could slaughter a karban. It's not considered to be part of the service of the karban of the sacrifices. So too, the other laws that we brought, waving the karban, bringing it to the mizbeach, if it was skipped, the karban is still kosher, the sacrifice is kosher. So for all of the previous things, which are not integral to a karban, therefore we needed our own source, how we have to do it by day. But everything else we mentioned, which is sprinkling the blood, burning on the mizbeach, the parts that have to be burnt, to shechting, slaughtering the bird karban called malika, taking the fistful of flour, which are all integral to the karban, that we know from, it says, Hashem commanded the Bnei Yisrael on the day to bring their karbanos. Next law, ulashkoyas asoita, and for a sota, a woman who was accused of being unfaithful to her husband, who drinks the water of the sota, has to be done specifically during the day. How do we learn that? The Gemara says, Asya Soita Soita. We learn a verbal analogy called a Gzeira Shava, where we have a tradition where you could compare two psukim, two verses which are similar. Says the word Soita in two different places. It says the word Torah in two different words. It says, in regarding to Asota, in Parshas Nasai, that after giving the instructions of Asota, what has to be done, the Torah says, the Kohen shall do all of the rules that we said, entire Torah that we said. Uksiv Hasam, Apia Torah Asher Yerucha. And we have another pasuk. This is in regards to Bezdin. If two people have a argument and they have to go up to the Bezdin, to the court during their times, and they have to listen to the Bezdin, to the judges, which are appointed by the Torah, Al-Pia Torah Sheyerucha, according to the teaching that they shall teach you. Ma Mishpat. Bayoim, just like all halacha, all court cases can only be done during the daytime. Bezdin does not sit to hear a court case during the night. By night, they could continue, meaning if they started, they could have deliberations. We learn this from Parshas Kiseitze. It says that if a man dies and his Yoshim, his children, receive his or inherit his possessions, and it says, on the day that his son will inherit his possessions. From there we see that any legal things have to be done only during the day. And from there we see that any mishpat, any court case can only be done during the daytime. And just as it says over here, you must listen to the teachings of the Bezdin if you have a legal disagreement. So similar, it says, this is the Torah, and Vasla Kohen is called Torah Zois. The Kohen shall do to her this entire Torah, everything that we were told to do before. In verse 30, Vasla Kohen, the priest shall execute to her all this law. So the word, just like Torah of a court case means daytime, so too Torah of a by a soita also means that she has to drink the water only specifically during the daytime. And from there we see that if we cannot make a soita drink the bitter waters by night, only during the day. Now, although many of these halachas we learned are all have to be done only by night, there are specific situations where it's possible perhaps the mitzvah could be done by day. For example, the omer karban, you can only cut it by night, as we're going to see soon. However, if one did not count the omer, the omer, serious omer by night, could he count it during the day? So there is a disagreement in Mesechta Chulin if one can cut the omer b'diavad after the fact, if it could be done by day or not. And based if one can cut the barley for the omer by day is if one can count the omer by day. So therefore, b'diavad after the fact, if one did not count the omer by night, they should count it during the day, and then they can continue counting afterwards with a bracha. And if one did count by day, then they can continue the night afterwards with a bracha. But during the daytime, one cannot count the omer with a bracha. Next page. Just like all judgments of a court have to be done by day, so too the soita is given the water to drink by day. Next daytime mitzvah we said is Arifas Ha'egla. Arifas Ha'egla is this mitzvah over here, a very unique mitzvah called the Egla Arufa. The very last, I hope I wasn't muted for too long. The very last mitzvah, which Yosef learned with his father before he was sold, it has to do with this week's Chumash. If a dead body is found abandoned on the road, so the responsibility lies for the city which is closest to where the body was found. As we brought the story that the Rabbi Jordan in California, he got a phone call from Rabbi Chadakov, the Rebbe's secretary, saying, how is it possible that there was a group, a cult, which did a mass suicide in your area, even though it's nothing to do with them? He says, you have responsibility for everything that goes on. So the Torah sages and the elders and the people of the city have responsibility for the person who was found killed not too far from them, and they have to bring an atonement, not a karban, not a sacrifice in the Beis HaMikdash, but rather they bring a calf which did not have children, they bring it to land which was never planted, and they bring it to a river, and they have to kill it over there, and they have to say that we did not spill this blood, and we made sure that the person went through our town and he had food, and we made sure he had someone to take care of him. We didn't abandon him. It's called Egla Arufa and has to be done only during the day. Why? If it's not a korban, it's not a sacrifice, it's not brought in the Beis HaMikdash, you don't sprinkle the blood. Why is it not done? Why can it not be done by night? So the Gemara answers, Amri Devei Rabbi Yanai. Rabbi Yanai, buried in Tiferes, he says, Kapara ksivba kikadishin. It says, by an Egla Arufa, the word kapara. If one is found slain in the land which Hashem, that God gives you, the elders and the judges shall leave the land, shall leave their city, measure the close by cities to the person who's found dead, and they have to take a heifer of the herd which has not been worked, and the elders of the city shall bring it to a valley with running water which was never planted, and they shall cut the neck in the valley. And the Kohanim come, and the priests and the Zkainim have to come, and they say, and the elders of the city, and they say, we have not shed this blood, we are not responsible, our eyes have not seen who did it. Kaper l'amcha Yisrael, may Hashem forgive the nation of the Jewish people for what has happened. From there we see the word kaper, kapara. Kapara is an atonement. Kstiva kikadshim. Just like a korban, sacrifices in the Beis HaMikdash are a kapara, are an atonement, so too the Egla Arufa is also an atonement. And just like a regular person cannot have any benefit from a korban, from the sacrifices in the Beis HaMikdash, you cannot go start warming yourself up in the fire on the Mizbeach. You cannot take the meat and eat it. You cannot have any benefit from it. Only the Kohen. So too, the Egla Arufa, the calf which is killed when there's a dead body, is also prohibited to have any benefit from it. And the land cannot have any benefit. It has to stay barren forever. Next one, Lataris HaMetzora. To purify the Metzora, the leper, has to be done during the day. There was a special process for taking two birds, and he has to cut off all of his hair in his body. How do you know that in Metzora, purifying the leper has to be done during the day? Tichsiv, as it is written, Zois tia teres ha-Metzora b'yoim tarasai. In Parshas Metzora says this shall be the law of the Metzora on the day when you purify him. And so the day purifying, from there you see that has to be done specifically during the day. Next, the entire night you're allowed to cut the barley for the Omer offering in the Beis HaMikdash. It says the Omer offering, here's a whole slideshow presentation, exactly how it's done. We watched a video about it. But you see, by night, they have to go and cut the barley, and then it has to be processed, mixed it with oil, waving it in the Beis HaMikdash, like we learned, has to be done during the day. Taking the koimetz, 3 fingerfuls, putting it on the mizbeach. Has to be hagasha brought to the base of the mizbeach, has to be done during the day. And only afterwards could everyone eat the grain that was harvested and planted in the past year. Cutting the korban omer, cutting was a large ceremony. They made a very big deal out of it because they were what's called the tzedukim, the Sadducees, who denied any of the traditions of the Chacham, of the sages. but they believed in the literal translation of the Torah, and they would say that cutting the omer, cutting the barley, has to always be done on a Sunday. Why a Sunday? Because they would interpret the Torah very, very literally. And let's go to Parshas Emor. Here in Parshas Emor, and Paragraph Gimel talks about Hashem told the Jewish people, when you come to the land of Israel, and you shall plant it, you shall have a harvest, the first fruits have to go to the Kohen, and you have to cut the omer. Tzartem es katzira. Avesem es omer, to bring the omer offering to the Beis Hamikdash. You wave it, and you have to bring a carbon, and you cannot eat any grain from the past year until the carbon omer is brought. It has to be rather from the year before. And then it says, verse 15, a mitzvah to count 49 days. Count the omer. And it says, you shall count from the day after Shabbos. You shall count from the day after you have brought the omer, which has been waved. You have to count 49 complete days until after the 7th week. 50 days altogether. Then comes a new Yom Tiv called Shavuos. It says the word Macharas Shabbos, the day after Shabbos. What's the day after Shabbos, Dovi? What's the first day of the week? Sunday. So the Tzedukim, they would say that you have to bring the carbon omer only on a Sunday, not any other day of the week. If you look over here, the Pirush, Rashi, you could so Rashi says that everybody, the Tzedukim would say, Yom HaShabbos means Sunday. We know the day Shabbos means a day of rest. It doesn't mean necessarily Sunday. We know that from a tradition of our sages, and therefore, but Pesach could fall out on a Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, any day of the week. And the second day of Pesach is the day you bring the Omer and the Beis Hamikdash. The second night of Pesach is when you cut the barley. The Tzedukim, they would always try making that Pesach shall fall out to be on a Shabbos, in order that when you cut the Omer, it should be on a Motzei Shabbos, on a Sunday. Being as it says, and you shall count the day after Shabbos, Macharas HaShabbos. In order to show how they are not correct, and therefore they would make a very big to-do and a very big deal, with a very long ceremony, how they will cut the carbon omer. Sometimes they will cut it even on Friday night. If Pesach came out to be on Thursday, Thursday night, Friday, and then they will cut it on the night of Shabbos, on Friday night. On Shabbos, it was a special mitzvah that it would push away Shabbos. So the entire night is kosher to cut the barley. How do you know? Ktsira, Omar Mar, for our master said, Ktsira sfira balayla v'hava b'yom, cutting the omer and counting the omer has to be done by night. Bringing it as a carbon omer, as a offering, as a mincha in the Beis Hamikdash, could be done by day. So we learn, we'll go back to the words of the pasuk, Sheva Shabbosos Tmimos Tiena. We must count 7 complete weeks. If we only cut the barley by day, you wouldn't have 7 complete weeks. You would have 48 and a half days. Now, usually we say a half a day is like a whole day. For the good and for the not good. Someone who's sitting Shiva, so then they don't have to sit for 7 days. 6 days and a little bit is enough. Here the Torah says Tamimos, you must count 7 complete weeks. So we must include from when you cut down the barley. So you must also include the night in the time from when you cut the barley. How could that be? You have to cut it only by night. For those, everybody who davens and shul on the night of Shavuos, and they're very aware that we always start very late on the first night of Shavuos. Why? We have to wait till Seisat Chavim 3 stars come out, because we have to say Baruch Hu. Usually, you can say Baruch Hu a little before that, but we wait to say Baruch Hu to bring in the holiday till it's after Seisat Chavim, because we need 7 complete weeks. So the day has to be completely finished. So since we need Tamimus, therefore we have to bring it by night. And once we cut the barley by night, we have to count. When do we count? At the same time that we count the first night. We are cutting the barley, and tonight's the first night of the Omer. So you count at the same time that you were cutting, which is at night. So you have to count the Omer every single night. So therefore, counting the Omer has to be done by night, and the cutting of the Korban Omer has to be done by night. And therefore, nowadays, if you count with a bracha, the Omer, you can only do it by night. You cannot count with a bracha by day. You are allowed, if one did not count the Omer by night, you can count it during the day, but you do it without a bracha. The Meiri says you can do it even with a bracha, but Shulchan Aruch and Mishnah Brura and Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch all say that if somebody forgot to count one day of the Omer, then you continue counting afterwards without a bracha, because you have lost the Tamimus, the completed weeks. However, if you count it by day, you still have Tamimus, you still have complete weeks. And therefore, you're allowed to continue counting with a bracha if you counted the Omer by day. If you the Gemara over here, Mesechta Chulin, Daf Ayin Aleph, Amen Aleph, has an argument. If when it comes to cutting the Korban Omer, if one did not cut it by night, can they cut it? If one did not cut the Korban Omer by night, the barley, could they cut it by day? And so according to the opinion that you can do it by day, therefore you could also count the Omer by day. And they say it's not going to detract from the Tamimus, from the complete. According to Rabbi, one is allowed to cut the Korban Omer by day, and therefore you can count the Omer by day as well with a bracha. According to Rishon ben Elazar, you can only do it by night. And therefore, halacha is, but the Eben, after the fact, one can count the Omer by day without a bracha and continue afterwards with a bracha. A question which is asked by several Rishonim, the Rashba, the Ram, the Rif, they ask a question on our Mishnah and our Gemara. We listed many mitzvos which can only be done by day, and then we list 2 mitzvos which can be done by night. One is cutting the Omer, which includes counting the Omer, and another mitzvah is burning the leftovers of the korbanos which have not been burned on the mizbeach during the day. But how come we don't mention reading the Megillah by night. Say the entire night is kosher to read the night Megillah reading. Why don't we mention Megillah reading by night? Why don't we mention Kriya Shema is a mitzvah to say Shema by night? It says B'shach becha u'kumecha, when you lay down, which is a night, you want to say Shema. So why don't we mention reading the Megillah at night is allowed to be done by night? We mentioned the daytime Megillah reading could be done by day. Mention the nighttime Megillah reading could be done by night. And mention Shema, which is supposed to be said by night, in the beginning of the night, but it could be said the entire night. The different answers are given. Among the answers is why our Mishnah doesn't mention night mitzvahs of Megillah and saying Shema. Because as we have mentioned once, when the Torah says about Shema, it doesn't say you should say it by night and by day. It says when you go to sleep and when you wake up. So there's dawn, which is a Alois HaShachar, which for yesterday was 5:55 a.m. Sunrise is 7:27 a.m. Mishayaker, when it becomes light enough to recognize colors or tzitzis or your friend, 6:33 a.m. Most people, at least back then, would wake up as soon as it became Alois HaShachar dawn. But some people wouldn't wake up then. They would wait until it became lighter that they could actually have benefit from the light. It's called Mishayaker. And some will wake up even later by Netzachama. Only the children of kings, princes, who had plenty of candles and had no financial worries, they will wake up later, 3 hours into the day, 9:46 a.m., according to the Alter Rebbe. And thanks to them, thanks to the princes of back then, Zman Kriya Shema is 9:46 a.m. and not 7:27 a.m. So we have what to thank the privileged princes for back then. B'di'evet, after the fact, if one did not say Shema during the nighttime, so during the night where we see over here on the screen, there's stars, it's dark, this is a time for Shema. If one did not say Shema the entire night, B'di'evet should still say the nighttime Shema from when the sun is starting to come up, even all the way till sunrise till Nesachama. So even when it's getting light before the sun comes up, they can still say Shema at night. B'di'evet, you do without the bracha of Birchas Kriya Shema, because there are some people who are still sleeping. It's not yet a time of waking up. It's still a Zman Shchiva, a time of light of sleeping for some people. Therefore, they could say the nighttime Shema at that time. So therefore, we don't mention Shema as one of the mitzvahs which can be done the entire day, the entire night, because Shema is not dependent if it's daytime or nighttime. Rather, it's dependent on waking time or sleeping time. And that's why you could even say Shema if it's starting to get light. The nighttime Shema, even if it's starting to get light, as long as the sun didn't come up yet, b'di'evet, after the fact. So that's the answer for.
Excuse me, is there a mitzvah of Kiddush Levana?
After saying after Alois HaShachar before Netzachama?
Yeah.
I think so. That's a good question. Kiddush Levana, I think, is specifically for appreciating what the moon does for us, right? So, like, if you see the moon in the middle of the day, many times you see the moon during the day, we don't say Kiddush Levana because then the moon is not lighting up the day. You have the sun. It's sort of playing second fiddle. So, after Alois HaShachar, I mean, the moon is not really lighting up it's not really being such a benefit for the world because it's still it's very light without the moon. That's my assumption. And also Megillah, Megillah, the reason why it's not listed here in the Mishnah as one of the mitzvahs which can be done the entire night is because if we bring down, as Rabbi Shiur ben Levi said earlier in Mesechta, his source, or I think it was Dalan Rabbeis, from a pasuk from a verse which says, Elikai ekra yoimam v'loy saneh v'layla v'loy dumyuli. Dalet Amud Aleph, the bottom. Where's this? Here. Rabbi Shiur ben Levi says regarding Purim, a person is obligated to read the Megillah at night as well and repeat it during the day. So during the day, our Mishnah said the Megillah can be read the whole day, but it did not mention that the Megillah can be read the whole night. The reason is because the proof, the source that Rabbi Shiur ben Levi brings is from the pasuk in Tehillim, which says in the prayer of Esther was davening to Hashem as she's coming up to the throne of Achashverosh, and she said, Hashem, my God, I call you by day, you do not answer, and by night there is no answer, no dumya. It's there's no answer to me. So it's alluding that by night and by day we must read the Megillah. And he's saying, what Esther is saying is that don't rest, not by day, not by night, and rather cry out to Hashem. Meaning don't sleep. Rather, instead of sleeping, cry out to Hashem. So reading the night Megillah, the nighttime Megillah should be done at a time when people are sleeping, meaning when people are not shouting out. The reason why people don't cry out to Hashem is not because it's nighttime, because after a certain time you can't daven to Hashem anymore. If you don't call out to Hashem, it's because you're sleeping. And since Esther connects the daytime Megillah reading, according to the nighttime Megillah reading, that don't be quiet and rather cry out to Hashem, meaning read the Megillah by night, so it has to do with when people go to sleep. And therefore, the Megillah is not really a law in nighttime, the nighttime Megillah reading, rather it's a law in reading the Megillah at the time that one usually does not cry out to Hashem, which is a time of sleeping. So technically, according to his answer, the Matas Yosef, if one did not hear the Megillah by night, probably would be able to hear the Megillah in the morning after Alois HaShachar, before Netz, although that's not how we pass in the halacha. But we have 10 more minutes left. And we're coming up to a very happy Yom Tiv, a holiday. Tonight is the third yard site of Mrs. Miriam Rosenblum. Very appropriate that she passed away on right before Erev Hanukkah, because her entire lifetime was being a ner laha'ir, to be a light to shining to everyone else. She would stand outside for days and nights, hours after hours outside Mari Avenue Kosher, Giant Eagle, giving out Shabbos candles, good cards. She would bring many children to make sure to learn in Jewish schools. The mitzvah of Hanukkah candles. That's just a nice background. The menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. So the mitzvah of lighting Hanukkah candles is a very special mitzvah, but in the Beis Hamikdash, as we see, there are only 7 branches in the menorah. We have 8 branches because the miracle happened for 8 days. If somebody has a choice, let's say they're very poor, and they can only afford either candles for the menorah or candles for Shabbos, to light for Shabbos candles, it says then you should light Shabbos candles. Because Shalom Bayis, we like Shabbos candles to have Shalom Bayis, should be light in the house on Shabbos, and that comes first. So we have three different candles. They're all mentioned in the same type of halacha, in the same breath. We just mentioned all three of them. The lights that were lit in the menorah, so the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash, the Shabbos candles that we light on Shabbos, and the menorah, which we light throughout the year, which we light every year in Hanukkah. All of them are light. Each one has a different purpose. Shabbos candles, idea is Shalom Bayis. To make peace in the home, to make it light in the house. You shouldn't slip, and you slip, you bang yourself, you blame it on somebody else. You shouldn't bang into a stone, into a wood. So it's to make peace between a man and his wife, a man and his children, to make peace in a personal level. The lights in the Beis HaMikdash were lit on a global level to shine the entire world. As a matter of fact, in the Beis HaMikdash, there were windows that were narrow on the inside and became wider on the outside because it would give light to the entire world. The lights of the menorah are actually different. It's not for light. You're not allowed to have any benefit from the light of the candles. You want to read your mail in front of the menorah, you're not allowed to. And that's actually one of the main reasons we put a shamish, that in case somebody did use the light of the menorah for something, at least they have a candle which is not part of the candles of the mitzvah. On Motzei Shabbos, you cannot use the lights of the menorah for a fire, for Ber Meri Ha'esh, for a fire on Motzei Shabbos during Havdalah. And Hanukkah, Hanukkah candles is something very unique. It's only holy. It's not there to have any benefit from the mitzvah itself. You cannot have any benefit from the light. It has to be lit, but you can't have any benefit from the light. But there's no purpose per se for the menorah, for the lights of the menorah, for the candles of the menorah, the light coming out of the menorah. The lights of Shabbos have a purpose to light up your home. The lights of the menorah in the Beis HaMikdash in the Holy Temple, they had a purpose. They were edus, they were testimony that the Hashem rested among the Shekhinah rested, divine presence in the Jewish nation. Hanukkah candles have no purpose directly in and of itself, that they should be shining and lighting. There's other side purposes of Hanukkah candles. Pirsumei Nisa, spreading the light of Hanukkah everywhere. But this is not the main idea of Hanukkah, and that's why it's a mitzvah to make public menorahs which are electric, even though you're not fulfilling the mitzvah of lighting the menorah, because it's spreading the miracle. It's not the purpose of the mitzvah, it's an added benefit to the mitzvah. And if someone is lighting a menorah in his home and there's no one there to see it, they still light the menorah with a bracha, because Pirsumei Nisa, spreading the miracle of Hanukkah, publicizing, is not essential to the mitzvah of the menorah. If you didn't do it, you still fulfilled the mitzvah. There's, by Shabbos candles, that the halacha, the rule is that only one person makes a bracha, a blessing per candle. So let's say you have 5 people eating one meal, and there's one Shabbos candle. Only one person makes a bracha on the Shabbos candles. Why? Because the Shalom Bayis, for every additional candle, you're adding more light to the home, and it makes more light, more blessing. You can see better. So every additional Shabbos candle is an additional bracha. You can only make only one person can make a bracha per Shabbos candle. So if you have 5 people who together are eating at one table, only one of them can make a bracha on one Shabbos candle because they're not adding any more shalom bayis. So the shalom bayis aspect of it, the fact that you're adding on additional light to the house, is integral to the Shabbos mitzvah of Shabbos candles. If you don't have light being added on to the Shabbos candles, you cannot make a bracha. So the shalom bayis aspect is integral to the mitzvah. Hanukkah candles, halacha is exactly the opposite. If you have a very unique type of candle, almost like an Abdallah candle, a candle with 2 different wicks coming out of it. So if you have a bowl of oil and 2 wicks coming out, one on this side, one on that side, 2 different people, let's say it's the first night of Hanukkah, could make a bracha and each one light the other wick. And they could both make a bracha on the menorah. Even though there's no extra persuminisa, there's no extra publicizing of the miracle taking place, because it's both in one candle, right? It's in one little dish. Or the olden candle is one little dish of oil. So it's only one candle, meaning one ner, one lantern being lit, and it's 2 different wicks in the same lantern, and each one makes their own bracha. And there's no extra persuminisa publicizing of the miracle. It says in Mesechta Shabbos that if it's a time of danger and you cannot light the menorah on the street, you put the menorah on your table and it's enough. So you don't have to publicize the menorah to fulfill the mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to publicize it, especially when there's no danger. So Hanukkah must be something else. The purpose of the lights of Hanukkah must be something else. Not for the publicizing of the miracle. It's a nice thing to have, but the Hanukkah candles are not a means for something else, to light up the hand, to light up the home, or to show that Hashem is a testimony, Hashem is among the Jewish nation. Rather, they must be a purpose for itself, irrelative of anything else. Although there is halacha that you can't have a menorah more than 20 amas, about 31 or 32 feet tall. That's how you can have the world's tallest menorah, because you can't make a menorah over a certain height. And if somebody lives in an apartment building which is over 40 feet tall, they shouldn't light the menorah in the window, because people can't see it from the street. Unless there's a window opposite them, the people could still see it. So that's an additional aspect of the menorah. It has to shine, sort of like the Beis Hamikdash. But it doesn't mean that people have to see the light. It has to be the menorah has to be lit in a way that it's possible to see the light. But you must make sure that people actually do see it. So menorah must be a means